So we're here with Mr. Roger Arnold. We had you before on here. We were talking about the last time, about what was it, about a year ago when the Fed was cutting rates and doing all this stuff. Obviously, today's a crazy ass situation that, like, you know, is movie like, which is ridiculous. And obviously, we just talked about, like, people are losing their minds. They're buying toilet paper for some reason, and you know, everything at the store is gone. Like, we're having a huge, I don't know what, but so the couple of things that you know, even my friends were asking me about. Obviously, the Fed has cut the rates almost down to zero, and again, we covered a little bit of it's at zero, right? And we covered a little bit on the last webinar, and you guys can all watch it. It's on the website, and but what it means to people. Everybody's talking about the mortgage rates also being cut, but then last week they actually spiked twice to higher, almost a point. So the movement has been ridiculous, which I don't think people understand. And then obviously, I mean, this morning the stock market was halted for 15 minutes, where they stopped, you know, the rut that the stocks were going into. And then one of the big things that even I don't understand, and maybe you can explain it to us, the whole was it $700 billion that the Fed was trying to plug into it? So
$1.5 trillion.
So much crap, you know, it's so much crap. So we can start with whatever you feel like talking about, besides just you saying what everybody else is saying. Just stop listening to the media. It's fine. Like, just don't go crazy.
It is fine.
Yeah.
Let everybody else go crazy. What you should be doing is if you have any powder left, liquid assets left, money on the sidelines left, look for buying opportunities. Doesn't mean you have to go in right now. This distortion in the markets is going to be here for quite a while.
Yeah.
But remember, this event is going to pass. It's going to pass much more quickly than most people are aware of, which I'll get into momentarily. I know the media is telling you the opposite. They always tell you the opposite at the height of these types of things. The world's going to come to an end, etc.
Yep.
It's not going to come to an end. You know, even now, people, if you talk to people on Wall Street that were in the markets back in the 1980s, as I was, you know, they talk about where they were when the crash of 1987 occurred. The same thing is going to occur here. I remember when. So just make sure you kind of don't be afraid. Actually take in as much as you can from what's going on around you, and look at the people who are letting you know who they are. In situations like this, people's they have a tendency, whatever facade they have, politicians, media personalities, money managers, etc. The facade you'll get to look behind the curtain and see who they really are, what they're really made of. Is there any substance there? Do they really understand the way the world works? Global macroeconomics, the financial markets, the relationship between fiscal monetary policy, legislative branch, etc. All these things, how they fit together, how countries work together. Is there an understanding there of fundamentally how these things work? And what you'll discover is the vast majority of people don't. They have no understanding of it. They kind of jump on a bandwagon. This is part of what's known as the vicious cycle. You know, this is why we have the run on toilet paper. For Christ's sake, you know, let's get real here. It's like a bank run. Panic.
My wife just sent me a picture where it said, if we have a diarrhea virus, then people would go and buy the nasal spray. It's just It's ridiculous.
It is ridiculous.
It's hilarious. But so one of the things, you know, we're all about education, right? So the whole Sqwire platform is just being able to give people that literacy that they've never gotten. And when you have these kind of events, this is where weaknesses and strengths, just like you said, in politicians, people understanding really get uncovered, right? So, you know, we've had now 12 years of amazing markets since 2008. And the problem psychologically is whenever something is going great, it's never going to stop. It's always going to go great. So people make that decision based on whatever they're doing, that it's never going to end the way it is now. And then something happens, slaps them in the face, like now. It's like, oh my gosh, it's horrible. The world is coming to an end. It's never going to be better. It's always horrible. Now we're making decisions, long-term decisions based on temporary situations. So when it comes to this kind of situation, we are trying to teach, listen, this kind of stuff happens. It happens every 6 years. I mean, you look at the economic crashes, you look at market crashes, you look at, you know, pandemics of all kinds of sorts. But your basic fundamentals, your budgeting, your understanding that you have to have the 3 months to 6 months of savings, that this kind of stuff happens, that, you look at for opportunities in these kind of situations. Like one of my friends just called me like, oh my gosh, we got to refinance our house at 2.75% interest rate. I mean, that is an amazing once in a lifetime kind of situation that now in long term actually helps you so much better because of this stuff that happened. So it's just for people to understand, like, listen, the fundamentals of finance remain. They don't change because of this crazy thing happens. So you still have to be smart. You have to look at your cost cutting opportunities, your budgeting situation, understanding how your money flows. And what if you don't get to work for 2 weeks? You look at Italy. Italy is implementing interest-only payments on any kind of loans. They were talking about reducing the mortgages down to unforeseen time. Payments of any kind of electric, gas, and all that stuff has been pushed or minimized. Trump was talking about zero tax for the year just to help people. I mean, those are the things that economically countries are doing to help the population. But we have to help ourselves. It's very easy to get into a frenzy. You are one of the rare people that understand the whole economic engine, the way it works. Me, even, I mean, I've been doing, finance in 19, 20 years. There's so much stuff that the talking heads on CNBC and as, all the stations are talking about that doesn't impact me at home, me and my wife and me and the kids, right? So it's cool to explain this big picture stuff and tell people it's okay, this too shall pass, but learn the financial fundamentals and take care of your home based on that stuff, and really don't care about the 24-hour news, which is probably the worst thing that's happened to population today. So those are things that we try to teach people. And with the help of people like you, you're one of the really rare people that understand it and can communicate it simply.
We have
talking over people's heads.
First of all, with respect to that, there's two things I want to address. One is we have plenty of ammunition available. People are talking about how the Fed is out of ammunition. I mean, this is where I say, look for people who reveal themselves basically for having no idea what they're talking about. I don't care how much they're worth or how long they've been on CNBC or they're the chief economist of wherever. There are points where people say these things and that's who they are. And you realize immediately you have no idea what you do for a living.
Right.
That we have a self-correcting mechanism built into our economy that operates separately from fiscal measures or monetary measures or a legislative tax policy, all of those things together. Virtuous cycles and vicious cycles work together. A vicious cycle that drives this type of financial disruption has a response to it. As you were just talking about, one of your friends just refinanced. As treasury yields fall, mortgage rates are attached to them. And I think we might have talked about this before. Yep. The ABCs of global macro, I'll do it real quickly. A is as goes housing, so goes the U.S. economy. B is as goes the U.S. economy, so goes the world economy. And C is what is good for the U.S. is good for the world. Okay? Now, in this type of environment, one of the things that happens is money moves. Leaves equities, goes to treasuries, yields fall, mortgage rates get pulled down. That vicious cycle that caused this kind of activity that we're seeing right now to occur has a virtuous cycle response. As risk takers start to see mortgage rates crashing below 3% on a 30-year fixed rate. It hasn't occurred yet at par, but I think it will if this continues, and it looks like it's going to, at least through the summer and things like that. Risk takers are going to start moving out into the marketplace.
Yep.
They might start, first-time home buyers come in. And what happens, especially in that marketplace, is when Sally and John go buy their first home, Mary and Jack, or Mary tells Jack, her husband, if Sally and John can get a home, we can get a home.
Right.
I'm very serious about this. Women drive this marketplace, and then they start going. And you get this virtuous cycle of, well, if Sally and Mary and their husbands can get a home, then we can go get one too.
But women are smarter than us, so that's why they drive it.
Listen, this is the way it works. It is the way it works. It's the nesting instinct. This isn't sexism. This is just the way life works, okay? Women want homes, period. And that's just a part of this process. Now, that's specific to the first-time home buyer marketplace. But investors are going to start stepping in as well. Oftentimes, that activity starts even when everybody is still convinced, at least within the media complex, that the world is coming to an end. Most people don't realize that what's happening at that pinnacle of that point of crisis or apparent crisis is that the real risk takers are taking advantage of it. And you're going to start seeing that. I fully expect that we're going to have a very strong housing market, at least in the urban centers, starting this spring. And again, right now, people are saying it won't happen. People are going to hide out in their homes. No, they're not. No. I'm telling you right now, it's easy to get people to hide under their beds and put lamb's blood over their doors and hope that the angel of death will pass them by when it's cold outside. But once it gets warm outside, which we're on the near getting to, people are going to say, you know what? I think I'll just take a risk and get out there because I want to be outside. People's attention spans are very short. What you're seeing in the marketplace right now, by the way, a lot of the people who have had the coronavirus are starting and have gotten over it, are being interviewed, and they're saying, that was no big deal. Yeah. Maybe it's starting to realize, and I'll tell you, from my perspective, I'm dead serious about this. I told my wife, I'm ready to just go find a place that can give me the coronavirus so I can get this out of my way and get the immunity. And I am dead serious.
It's funny. I was just talking to a friend of mine, the same thing. I was like, I'd rather get it now and just get it over with and be done rather than later.
Absolutely.
So real quick, give me, just because this whole conversation is because there's so much crap out there in TV, and I don't think people understand what it all means. So number one, when the biggest news now is obviously the Fed cutting the rates and then talking about pushing dollars into the economy and trying to stabilize the market. Yeah. What does that mean? I mean, was it a 1.5 trillion?
1.5 trillion is what was announced. Don't worry about the size of it. As a matter of fact, the size doesn't really mean anything. The initial response by the Fed is to get, especially the money centers, the four biggies: J.P. Morgan, Citigroup, Bank of America, and who did I miss?
Deutsche? No.
No. Bank of America, Citigroup, J.P. Morgan, and Wells Fargo. Those four. Okay, they represent 40 or 45% of the banking market in the United States. They're called money centers. You've got to get them to relax internally. You're going to be taken care of. The Fed's going to make sure you don't have to go and do insolvency and things like that, and then get them to focus on taking care of the rest of the 6,500 or so banks in the United States. That is the initial process the Fed has to go through. There are many other things about the Fed that they can do after that's done. That largely is already done, though, contrary to what the markets are saying with respect to the move. People talking about how, again, as we talked about a minute ago, the Fed is out of ammunition. The Fed is nowhere near out of ammunition. We haven't even begun. The Fed can do all kinds of things. If they need to, the Fed can start taking off the books of the banks the non-performing loans, people who can't pay their bills on their mortgage, etc. They pile them up at the Federal Reserve. They tell everybody payments are no longer even being accepted. Even if you can, don't send it. We're putting everybody in arrears for right now. Let it go into a negatively amortizing position. Just putting their interest on top of the balance they have. Deal with this in 12 months, 24 months. After this initial crisis is over, the Fed can go in and start buying up hard assets. It can start buying stocks. This is very common in other parts of the world, okay? Most other central banks are already involved in this and have been for quite a while. Look over at Japan, the Bank of Japan. They are the dominant force in virtually the entire financial markets there, not the banks or the retail investor. Right. They are the ones supporting everything.
So that just means they're making the people with the money that's funding really the economy and the loans and the businesses and the housing and everything to be comfortable with that compared to closing up the ability for the money to flow.
That you're not going to have cascading defaults. Get people to realize we're going to do whatever it is we have to do, and we have the financial capacity to do so. And once that fear gets out of the way, then people can start thinking, I shouldn't say worrying about, thinking about, okay, focusing on picking up the pieces. How do I get my paycheck back? How do I get back in the system? I'm not going to lose my home.
The common sense stuff. You can actually make a decision based on like, okay, well, now we're moving forward. And then what's the other side of the thing that I just read this morning, the 25 billion financial package that Italy passed to support the citizens. And then I guess the House passed it, but the Senate hasn't passed a 50 billion here. What does that money go towards? Does that, do we know?
Well, I don't know what they're going to put it towards at this point. I think it's probably just going to be staffing up for the infrastructure that will be necessary to manage this type of program.
Okay.
But it's remember Bush did the thing where he gave everybody $200 and things along those lines.
Right.
We may end up having to do things like that. It's the steps that are being taken. You know, in physics, the purpose of time, in the definition of physics, which I also lecture on, will not get into that right now, is that everything can't happen at the same time.
Right.
You know, we're aware of what's going on. We know we have a short-term crisis, a disruption in the marketplace, and it's going to be addressed. You know, if you get into a traffic jam somewhere, somebody up ahead of you on the highway has an accident, and all of a sudden there's a traffic jam and you're parked on the highway. You don't automatically start thinking, oh my God, everything's parked. It's never going to move again. I'm going to die in my car. I mean, that would be asinine, right?
Right.
Of course, you sit there and say, okay, I'm going to be late for my meeting. I might, you know, whatever. You start thinking about the things you have to do, and maybe you're getting ticked off about it, but it's okay. It'll pass, right?
Right.
Same thing here. We've just had a traffic accident in the economy. It's going to be fine. Nobody's going to lose their homes as a result of this type of thing. Nobody's going to get their heat turned off. Everything has to happen for governments to coordinate with industry, for industry to coordinate with the banks, is going to happen. Now, there are some technical things that I'll just address briefly that are a little bit bothersome. One is the Trump administration really aware of what the situation is, what needs to be done, and how to do so? And I'm not sure about that, okay? They'll figure it out.
Right.
Trump has said he's not happy with Powell, and he's right. And this is not to detract from Powell's ability to run the Fed. During stability in the marketplace, during regular day-to-day procedures, you want bureaucrats in charge of the Fed, okay? They are not leaders. They are reactive by design. They don't make decisions. They have models that make decisions for them. They get together every 6 weeks or so. They look at the model and they all harumph, and the model makes a decision. They are not actually making decisions about anything. But when you run into a crisis like this, that type of bureaucratic head needs to be put to the sideline, and you need to have a leader put in place. And that leader then needs to go back to the money centers, say, okay, I'm no longer just in a reactive position. I am now the chairman of the board of the Federal Reserve. I am working in that capacity to make monetary policy link with and coordinate with fiscal policy, legislative policy, whatever the Trump administration needs, so that all of these things can be coordinated. And again, Powell is not the person to do that. It really wasn't Bernanke's position to do that last time out, although I think he did a pretty good job of it, especially given the fact that he was an academic. What you need is somebody like a Bill Barr at the top of the Fed at this point in time, okay? Now, that may or may not happen. What I mean by that is a senior financial executive, probably somebody who's already left the marketplace, that can be brought back in and then not feel the political weight of the money centers pushing on him and the politicians pushing on him, because he's now freed up to actually lead and do what is actually necessary.
Right.
Follow me?
Yep.
But it's not just the chairman either. The governors themselves should be pushed to the sidelines. Whether or not the president will do that, and by the way, real quickly, the president clearly has the authority to replace the chairman of the board of the Federal Reserve. These people that are saying that's not true don't know what they're talking about. He can do that. The cause, he has to do it with cause, but he can just decide what that cause is.
Right.
And if Powell
it seems like the steps that are being taken from the top, the whole closing down the schools for 2 weeks to let this, on almost, self-quarantine. I feel like they're learning from Italy. They're learning from China. I mean, I just saw the numbers today that China's new numbers are so low, and they're in one little area, so they're doing a fantastic job of keeping it down. So they're on the downslope. So it seems like, what we're trying to accomplish here, it seems to be a positive move. And now we just have to, calm the markets down and calm people down, that everything's going to be okay. Obviously, just like we said when we started.
That's the first step.
It's temporary. This too shall pass,
Of course.
Yeah.
Of course it will.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous to think otherwise. It absolutely will pass. It will pass very quickly.
Yep.
In no time. I fully expect that by the end of the summer, even if we have it here, people will have almost forgotten this situation is there. They will just acclimate to the ideas. Okay, we've got this thing floating around. I mean, it might be here with us permanently now.
Yeah.
We'll just have to address it. Our pharmaceutical companies will address it. The healthcare system overall will address it. In the near term, it is maybe we will have to have the military step in and provide access to facilities to make into temporary hospitals and things along those lines. So what? We'll do it.
Yeah,
You know,
I mean,
none of that is.
my mom is in Croatia. You know, I'm from there, and she's 72 years old. She's in a long-term care facility, and you know, they've been on lockdown for the last 2 weeks, and even Croatia, they closed their borders about a week ago, and you know, semi-quarantine, and you know, it's going well. But I'm worried about her because if you look at the numbers, it's really 70 plus, where the death rate is 17% compared to, you know, I have twins that are 9 years old. It's zero, you know, any of those are small. So just like you said, I'd rather get it out of the way, you know, use my toilet paper and whatever for a week of being.
I'm not kidding.
And be done.
Yeah, I'm dead serious when I say that, by the way. I'm not being facetious. If I could get it right now, I would go get it. I told my wife that.
Yeah.
I would go get it, hang low for anywhere from a week to a month, let it pass, be immune. Yep. And get out and live my life. Summer's coming. Let's get this out of the way now. I'm serious.
Any big industries that you see that are going to be struggling the most? Obviously, I mean, the cruise lines are down a lot because of all this stuff, obviously. But
well, the one that's being crushed the most in the U.S. is energy. Energy has been at. I mean, it's a kind of a double whammy for them. The fighting going on between Saudi Arabia and Russia over oil prices, which initially was the catalyst for them to drive down, had the knock-on effect of crushing alternative oil in the United States, which has been huge. The Permian Basin, all the way up through the middle part of the United States domestically. And you know, on top of that, then you have the slowdown in the economy as a result of this, you know, COVID-19 situation, and we will bail them out. We're not going to let them go under. Okay, that's not going to happen. We don't have to have cascading defaults on these companies. This is a part of the system as well. The banks will get together with them. If the banks can't carry loans that are in arrears, they can move them over to the Fed and things along those lines. So I don't expect that there's going to be a real, you know, defaulting crisis there. However, from the perspective of moving forward from here, they got a major headwind. You know, even if we get over this very quickly, you still come back to Russia, Saudi Arabia fighting over oil prices and holding them down.
Yeah, but that started before all this started. I mean, that's been going on for over 6 months.
Right.
The issues.
And yes, and that could lead to more problems. Saudi Arabia can't afford for this thing to go on very long before they may face, you know, financial insolvency themselves as a country. The break even. In order for Saudi Arabia to pay its bills in the social welfare systems it has put in place in that country to appease the masses and keep them from overthrowing the Saudis as the leaders of the country, means they have to sell oil at about $100 a barrel. Okay, that's break even. If they're selling oil below that level, in keeping within the OPEC structure, they have to borrow that difference, and they hope that's temporary. But this has been going on for a decade now. Okay, their debts just keep getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. It's a real crisis, and Putin is aware of it. And Putin is looking at them, thinking, you know what, I might be able to put the death nail in for OPEC by pushing them in this direction. Russia can clearly survive this. It's kind of, you know, who can hold their breath the longest. Right. And if Putin keeps pushing, this could end up being another world kind of crisis, a war over energy.
So what does that mean for us at home? Is it cheaper gas prices now? I mean, do we see drops?
Yes. We get cheaper gas prices.
You know, how does that hit the me and my wife's pocketbook?
Well, before we get there, the first thing I can say is, and I don't mean this politically. This is just from a practical standpoint. Thank God we were lucky enough to have something like this occur with Donald Trump or somebody like him in the White House. A leader that can actually address these issues. If this had occurred with Obama in the White House or Hillary Clinton in the White House or any of the other Republicans, by the way, it would be a much worse situation. The markets you see what the markets are doing, and the markets trust Donald Trump. Okay, so at least thank God he's there. I fully hope in the process of doing this, though, he's going to give marching orders to pretty much everybody else around the world. That he may call up Putin and say, look, stop the fight with Saudi Arabia. You can go fight later, but not right now.
Right.
you know, and hopefully
Got a,
Putin will
got a
listen.
bigger issue at our doorstep.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
And the same with, you know, the Germans seem to be coming around with breaking the block on fiscal stimulus that the Germans have had in place. Really, it's part of the European Union, the Stability and Growth Pact there that limits their ability to fiscally spend. That looks like that's broken, which is a positive. So they're going to do what's necessary and perhaps prevent their immediate, dissolution of the European Union. And I hope that once this is all done, that China is made to pay an enormous price. They're already going to pay an enormous price domestically, which we don't have time to get into right now. China is absolutely, this is a catastrophic economic situation for China, much more so than the 2008 crisis. The 2008 crisis, they spent all of their available reserves to prevent them from collapsing. They have no reserves left, okay? They have also, they're caught in what's known as the middle income trap. And the middle income trap is when a country is caught between what's known as basically a second world economy, and trying to make the leap from that middle situation into a first world nation. A first world nation is one that has a robust research in technology developments. Singapore has it, Taiwan has it, Japan has it, but really the two that have it in the world from a leadership position are Japan and the United States. And the United States is far ahead of everybody else. But what happens in middle income position is it's kind of like jumping over a stream. If you're moving from emerging markets or third world, which is where you don't have any kind of infrastructure, financial infrastructure, physical infrastructure, power infrastructure, which is still the case in China in many of the rural areas. They've been able to make it into a second world status where they built roads and power and bridges and things in their urban areas, but it largely hasn't gotten out to the rest of the country yet. But they've never been able to make it to first world. It's very cheap to go from third world to second world or emerging markets into this place where you have housing and you have electric power with switches and things along those lines, which China has just done a great job of over the last 30 years and increasingly so over the last 10. But it's very, very expensive to go from having built infrastructure and leap into a first world nation status, which is Xi's goal. They spent all that money in 2008, and now they're facing this crisis and the backlash that's going to follow coming from governments and private industry. There's going to be a lot of industry that moves out of China by necessity now, because remember, this isn't just a black swan event. This is the third time now we've dealt with this with China in the last decade, and people are fed up. Governments around the world are going to be fed up with it this time because of how much it's costing them. And although China may survive, it looks to me like they may very well be caught in what's known as this middle income trap, which is permanently, they never make it to first world. They actually begin sliding back into emerging market state or third world state again.
I can't even imagine the economic impact really when you think about what it's going to cost the United States for us all to go through this, from the government to me and my wife and you and everybody, and what we're spending, what we're not making. I mean, it's a huge impact. It's a huge impact.
But that's okay. We'll get through it. If there's one place in the world you want to be,
it's here. Oh,
it's
absolutely.
Here. It's the United States.
Even me being from Croatia, I still think I live in the best country in the world, and it's nice to go visit back there, and it's beautiful beaches. But this is where you want to be when all this stuff is happening, and that's the biggest thing that anybody needs to realize. Just like I said in the beginning, taking care of the fundamentals. Not listening to what everybody's talking on 24-hour news, knowing that it's going to pass. Understand your budget, cut costs, take advantage of the long-term benefits that are coming out of this, like the mortgages, like opportunities in the stock market, your 401ks and stuff. Those are all the things that are good, and you should focus on the good rather than, worrying about what the news tells you should be worried about, because that's their job. That's because then you're going to watch more and you're going to pay attention more and you're going to listen more. And that's all they really want.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Again, we just have to make sure that initially right now we address the fear. People are worried about losing their jobs, worried about not having money. And again, that really, in my opinion, comes from a concerted effort, coordinated effort from fiscal and monetary policy leaders, and legislative and the executive branch, Congress and the president.
Yep.
And look, that's coming together. It's coalescing very, very quickly. So, again, I'm not worried about any of this.
Yeah.
I think that might be a function of age as well, having been through so many different crises. I went through the SNL crisis of the '87 crisis. You slog through them. And what the smart people do is they look for, where the opportunities are. And there's always opportunity, man.
Yep. I know.
There's always opportunity.
And that's actually a great thought that you just said. Age obviously brings you wisdom and understanding that these things happen. They always happen. They always will happen. You just have to, deal with your own reaction. That's the only thing that you can actually control. And, for younger people, because we have so many millennials that this is the first time that they're making money. This is the first time they're out of colleges getting jobs, because 2008, they were 12, where now they're 24. So at 12, it didn't hit them. It didn't mean anything. They might have seen mom and dad be stressed a little bit, or that's the benefit. But now it's actually hitting them. And this is the first time that they're seeing something like this happen. And, I just want to make sure that they understand it's okay. We've all seen it.
Yeah.
I'm 42 now. I've seen, September 11th happen and how that impacted everything. Then you got the 2008. Now we have this. And, you come out of it next year and go, all right, well, that was kind of crazy. But, we're still around. We're still happy. And, my bubbles at home were just delicious when we were, sitting around and quarantined ourselves.
My daughter works in private equity, and I was talking to her yesterday, and she was saying, thank God I have you to talk to about these things.
Yeah.
But who can I tell my friends to listen to? Who out there is in the media is telling us what we need to know? And who should they go to? So look, at the first thing is learning who not to listen to, and it's anyone in the media right now. Media people love this. Now, remember, listen, I was on the radio. I was a writer for 10 years as well. Yeah. Leave this stuff alone. People in the media want to, this is how they get their hits.
Sensationalize everything.
Absolutely. And you can't, don't worry, be happy doesn't sell. But, so the first thing is turn off the media. And I'm not kidding. I'm dead serious, because you're doing yourself a disservice by listening to these people. It's absolutely horrendous what's coming out of the media in this situation. And then they say, well, my daughter says, but then I have nothing. I say, having nothing is better than being misinformed.
Yep.
Okay?
And this is the one thing that I've noticed. So many, Facebook again is the same thing. I mean, it's just the posts that are coming up and this just came out last night, and you found out it's all a hoax and it's all fake news. Like, you just have to understand that that's not where you should be getting your information. It's not anything. Just continue life as you know it. Play with your kids, break out the board games, make them read, teach, right. Enjoy your life and continue going. Hey, we're at about 30 minutes. Roger, thank you so much, man. This was awesome. I appreciate you as always, and being and just for everybody that is watching, I texted Roger last night. I was like, hey, do you mind jumping on? And your response was like, well, I'm at the store now, but yeah, I was like, dude, it's 9 o'clock. Like, how about tomorrow? So just your willingness to talk to us is unbelievable. I really, really
sure.
And your
insights
are always incredible. So let me know when you're coming down to Virginia Beach. We'll grab a drink or lunch or something.
Let everybody know. You coordinate something. I'll be down when it works for you.
Perfect. Hey, Roger, have a great day. Thank you so much, man.